up, guys? So today we got a question from Raymond, who just recently got promoted from being an MMA student at his gym to now he's helping with the MMA program as a coach. And he's wondering if I have any tips that I could give him on speaking in front of people, because he's a bit nervous about that whole prospect of speaking in front of people and sharing information. So Raymond, thank you for the question, brother. And you might know the story if you've watched the videos that I used to have a bit of a stutter when I was younger. And just like you, eventually I got into a position where I became a coach, and this was around purple belt, and I was not really super excited about the prospect. I was excited about coaching, but the thought of speaking in front of people was not something that necessarily I felt comfortable with. I felt okay with it, but it definitely made me feel a little uncomfortable at first. And so I'll give you some tips that might be useful to you about getting started, and I'll also give you a couple tips to focus on how to improve your ability to become a conveyor of information and a teacher. So number one, is that when you get into that situation, the most important thing that you can possibly do, in my bearded opinion, whenever you're in a situation that's a bit uncertain, when you feel uncertain of yourself, is to be as prepared as possible. When you're getting ready for an MMA fight, for example, right? What do? You prepare yourself to the best you can, so this way you can have the best outcome, right? So you always train for the worst, so you can have the best outcome, right? That's the idea. And so you want to have as much information piled up together, more than you'll possibly need, so this way you can be prepared for your students. So what I personally do when I'm teaching a class is I grab my phone. By the way, if you ever come to one of my classes or seminars, you'll probably see me walking around with my phone. I'm not using it to text or to mess around on social media. I'm doing it because I write down the lesson plan section by section on my notes. I have a little template that I just cut and paste, and then I fill in my stuff. But basically, I use it as a timer, and then in there I'll have like the drills, how many rounds we're going to do these drills, and then the techniques we're going to show, and then the situational rolling or the full rolling or whatever it is I have planned. I have it all lined out there, so this way as I'm going through, it's right there, and it helps me be prepared. And in some cases, if the technique is maybe new to me, something I'm working around with myself, I'll actually put pictures into that, so to remind me of what the technique was, and I'll have notes about it just in case I need to refresh myself a little bit before I teach the class, because again, I'm still learning, so I'm still trying new stuff, and so I'll do it all like that. And so again, I put as much in there as I can to be as prepared as possible for my students, and I would not step onto the mat if I were you without being prepared and having a lesson plan together with as much information as possible to be prepared for those people. The next thing is to sometimes slow yourself down a little bit. If you're not comfortable speaking in front of people yet, you might have a tendency to either stumble over your words, which turns into this sort of verbal vomit, where your mind's going faster than what you can get out, and it kind of gets all jumbled together. And one of the things that I did to get over that, because that used to be a problem for me, right? When I stopped stuttering all the time, but I still had this issue where my mind would go faster than my words could come out, and it would come out like this, I would start getting stumbled over my words. Sometimes it even happens in these videos when I get excited with you. If I notice that, what I try to do is I try to bring awareness to some part of my body. It could be my feet touching the ground. It could be my fingers. If you guys ever talk to me in person, sometimes you might see me kind of do this with my hands, where I'm kind of touching my fingers together, rubbing them together. It's basically giving me a sensation to separate me from my head. In meditation, you do that stuff, right? You'll sit down and you might breathe, and you might focus on your breath. You might focus on the way your hip bones sit and press into the ground, and it gives you this separation from your brain, right? Like by focusing in on the body, I can kind of have this separation from all the stuff that's going on here, and it helps me slow things down. And so when you're teaching someone, if you find that you're having like verbal vomit because you're speaking too fast, or you're not speaking fast enough, whatever's happening, right? Slow yourself down a little bit. Especially if you're in a nervous position, you might have this sort of proclivity to want to speak a little faster, but if you slow down, it'll be completely fine. Like right now, I'm pausing a lot more and I'm speaking slower. I'm not speaking that slow though, but it feels like I'm speaking for a long time because I'm in front of this little mechanical eyeball talking to you, and you'll probably feel that same way when you're teaching. So when you're in those situations, you might want to slow down just a little bit. Another thing to keep in mind when you're teaching your students, this is another tip for you, is that they're probably going to ask questions. Don't take those questions as a negative. A lot of times when I've seen young coaches, when they are teaching, if they're in an uncertain position of themselves, which again, it happens for new coaches, because again, part of the way that we cement ourselves to what we're doing in society is by the feedback that we get from others, right? So for instance, the way that you build your self-esteem as a comedian would be to get to people to laugh. If you get up there on stage and you tell jokes and nobody's laughing, you're getting crickets, right? Well, then you're not a good comedian, or at least you weren't that day. You bombed, right? And if you never can make anyone laugh, well, then you're probably not the best comedian. Just the way it is. It would be like jiu-jitsu. If you never, ever won a roll, or if you never did a move correctly, you're not a good jiu-jitsu practitioner. You have to do more practice, right? And as a coach, we want to get out there, especially when we're new. We want to get out there and show the students some cool stuff. We want them to be like, yeah, that really worked for me. That was really useful. Or, man, I've never seen that before. We want to get that validation into our position and what we're doing. So, with that said, a lot of times when people ask questions early on, because you're uncertain of your position, it may send you into a negative place. You might be thinking, oh, this works perfectly fine. Why don't they just accept it, right? They're probably, if you feel that sort of thing, more than likely that's not what's going on. More than likely they're just asking you a question because they're curious and they want to understand better. And I just share that that's not everybody's hang up, but I've seen that become a hang up for some people. They get kind of defensive when questions are come up. Don't get defensive. Simply answer those questions because they're asking. And here's the beautiful part. If they ask you a question and you don't know the answer, then tell them, you know what? I don't know the answer to that. Let me go look that up. That's a really cool place to be because it shows that you as a coach are still learning. And then if you go look it up later and come back, it'll show that you're actually working to become better for them, which is a beautiful thing too. And then another thing is simply practice. You'll get better with it over time. You're probably not going to be great in the beginning, but practice. Practicing is the way that we get good at anything, including teaching, and our ability to share information. Because again, you've got to break down these chunks of information and share it to that other person, and that's going to take some time and your ability to get better at it, right? Being able to sort of speak off the cuff and just break down complex ideas into simple ones that people can understand. And the last tip that I'll give you, I'm just throwing them out here, like really like boom, 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 right, one after the other, is to become a student of teaching. Go watch, not just jiu-jitsu teaching, but any discipline you can get a hold of. Watch the way that teachers of any sort of discipline speak, the way that they share information, the little ideas that they do, the analogies that they use to sort of bring ideas together. If you watch a jiu-jitsu coach, watch how he like brings attention to a particular limb, or the way that he might move his body in a particular way to sort of bring a emphasis to something, or whatever it might be. And then when you find something that makes you go, I like that. I like the way that he did that. Or I like the way that she did that, then go take that and then immediately go use it. Try it out for yourself. This is something that I do all the time with my students. If I find like a really cool way that someone ran a class, or the way that they taught a particular technique, maybe something, I take it. I'm going to model after that. I'm going to obviously make it my own. I'm not going to do it verbatim, right? But I'm going to make it my own style, but I'm still going to take that idea and use it just like I would a technique from my coaches in jiu-jitsu. I'm like, oh man, that's a really good technique. Let me take that, make it my own, and I'll use it myself. And so do the same thing with your teaching. Don't just learn techniques, but also develop your ability to share those techniques with other people. Because not everybody that's a good jiu-jitsu practitioner is a good coach, a good teacher. It takes a while to develop your ability as a teacher as well. So those are my tips for you, brother. And again, I said jiu-jitsu, you're doing MMA, it doesn't matter. Combat sports in general, like, I mean, it's the same thing. You know, and really those tips that I shared with you, those are pretty much universal. I mean, nothing specific to jiu-jitsu. Those are basic teaching tips. But those would be my ideas to you, Raymond. And good luck to your MMA coaching that you've gotten into. And I'll talk to you guys next time.